How is it that we find ourselves surrounded by such complexity, such elegance?
The genes of you and me, the genes of you and me are all made of DNA. We're all made of the same chemical DNA. We're all made of DNA. We're all made of the same.
Hello, you're listening to DNA Today, a genetics podcast and radio show. I'm your host, Kira Deneen. DNA Today informs you on what's happening in the genetic world. During my broadcast, I educate the public on genetic and public health topics through event coverage, news stories, book movie reviews, and interviews. Guests include genetic counselors, researchers, patient advocates, and professors in the field of genetics. Today's guest is Dr. Joanne Kamens. She's the executive director of Addgene, a mission-driven nonprofit dedicated to helping scientists around the world share plasmid reagents. We previously talked to her colleague, Dr. Melina Fan, about Addgene. You can go to dnapodcast.com and listen to that awesome episode. Definitely recommend it. Joanne received her PhD in genetics from Harvard Medical School, then spent 15 years at BASF Abbott, ultimately serving as the group leader in molecular biology. In 2007, she joined RXI Pharmaceuticals as Senior Director of Research Collaborations. Dr. Kamens has been raising awareness of women scientists since 1998. She founded the current Boston chapter of Association for Women in Science. Dr. Kamens was recognized as one of the 2013 PharmaVoice 100 Most Inspiring and one of the 40 over 40 women making an impact. She's an active presenter, and today she's going to talk about some topics she typically covers in her presentations, particularly about women in science and having a scientific career. You are definitely well established in the field. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Kara. I love to do this kind of thing.
It's really great to get the word out and really talk about these issues and for people to learn about them.
Absolutely. Awareness. Some people feel like the more you know about diversity, the more exclusive it is to behave in a non-diverse way. There's actually research on this. But I actually think that awareness is really important and that, most people, given a raising of their awareness, will be more careful with their language and their behavior.
Certainly, and you've been raising awareness for women in sciences for nearly 2 decades, so you definitely know what you're doing and know what you're talking about. What changes have you seen over the years? How much progress have we made? Where do we have to go? How much more progress do we have to make?
Yeah, so it's a little sad. For those of us who've been working on gender diversity, and I've been working on gender and other types of diversity, racial and capabilities and other types of diversity over my career, the numbers are not moving so fast. And it is an interesting phenomena that we've made a lot of change and a lot of people say they want there to be diversity, and it's the correct thing, especially in science where we're fairly liberal and open-minded about differences. But the actuality is that on every possible front of career success in STEM, women are still not progressing as they should be. So we can't use the excuse anymore that there's no pipeline. There is a pipeline. That means there are candidates coming. We can always use more. There are inequities, but it's really a big problem. And so most recently in the last few years, I've focused along with many other people on the area of implicit bias and unconscious biases that are causing us to make decisions in the workplace that are not really fair, even though we think they are. And that's having a very insidious effect on advancement.
So what organizations and movements or acts have been successful so far in that strive towards gender equality, specifically in scientific fields?
Yeah, so there are some companies that are very vocal and taking a very active role in making change. Google is one of those, actually. They're known for their implicit bias training, and there's a great YouTube video with one of their trainers doing their very enlightening training. Now, that's only an hour. It takes a lot more to change culture. But, really gathering, they also have examples of gathering data for the effect of implicit bias within the workplace. And can give you one example. One example they like to give is that when they have a team of people working on a project and they say, hey, the team made all these accomplishments. And then they follow up with people and they say, who really did these accomplishments on the team? What happens is no matter who was in charge or no matter what the role descriptions were, the men on the team are given credit for the accomplishments and the women are rated, less highly as sort of having helped. And when they attribute the accomplishments not to the team, but they announce it individually for each person, then the disparity goes away. if that was clear. It's kind of a complicated study. And so it's a very, very small acts within the workplace, such as properly attributing credit and accomplishment, can make a big difference in how people are perceived, which of course in the long run leads to career opportunities, salary increases, and really just inclusion and interesting work for that matter. So that's one example. So I like that companies like Google and other companies are starting to gather data and really hold themselves accountable for making change.
And Sheryl Sandberg has been one person in particular that's really been vocal about this with the Lean In Together new movement and everything. And she's really talking about exactly what you're talking about, of giving credit to women where credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan. I know it's controversial, and even realizes it's a complicated topic. So the question is, should we lean in or should the workplace lean in? And I think, Anne Marie Slaughter would say in her book Unfinished Business that the workplace needs to lean in, and Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In was about the women leaning in. And I would say both. We need both. We need women to, lean in as well and not, quit before they quit and do all those things that she prescribes. What I really admire about these women is that they could just sit back and be successful and quiet and pretend like they're men. And they don't. They come out very vocally and call attention to their fact that they're women and they're successful, and how they made it and the struggles they faced, which I think is truly inspiring, because one of the biggest problems we have for people who are in minority represented groups is that they feel like they're alone. And mentors and role models are hugely important, that are willing to speak up.
And they've certainly been trailblazers in the field of just women becoming more CEOs and having those higher roles within companies. The number of women CEOs in biotech companies particularly has been growing, but not as fast as we'd really like to see. What do you think are some factors that are contributing to women not, quote, climbing the ranks to higher level positions like CEO?
Yeah, I think that it's 1,000 little cuts, if you will. It's not just one thing. It's that bias at every level. It's less grant money. It's less, you walk into a room and you ask for money, and then the venture people look at you and they see, a little girl. They don't see a woman who's a competent leader. Because your voice is too high, or you don't golf, or whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like 1,000 little things, combined. And there are a lot of vocal pushes now, and there's a lot of data that demonstrate that diversity in biotechs and in larger companies is an advantage for those companies and from a business sense. So it's not just the right thing to do, although it is the right thing to do. It's also it makes business sense to have diversity. We're seeing it play out in so many ways. For example, if only men are starting biotechs, and the vast majority are men, they're only going to approach problems that are visible to men. And not all scientific problems apply just to men or to men and women. There are some problems that apply to women, and that science is really not getting enough exposure or enough business exposure. And so there's a million reasons why it's important, but that's just one of them. I think there's, in general, it's too hard in one podcast to go into all these details. I have some blogs online about implicit bias, and there's a growing literature. But, it is just it can be really, really difficult for women to move into that fast-paced world. I think in this country we have a problem also with work-life negotiation, and I'm by no means one of those people who thinks that that's the only problem. It's not the only problem. It's not just that women want to have children. Men want to have time with their families now as well. So this is really not a feminist issue. It's really a people issue in this country. Reasonable work hours, flexibility in the workplace, an excellent parental leave, which America, as you know, is so far behind in the United States from the world. All these things are going to combine to make the workplace more welcoming to women for fast-paced science such as biotech.
Do you see this happening in the near future, of really becoming more of a work-life balance happening? And companies have started kind of recognizing that personal time is very important, and other things like Family Leave Act and things of that nature. But do you see that becoming more progressive, or kind of staying the same, a little stagnant?
No, I think there will be change. I'm hoping that people demand it. So Addgene recently just won a Best Places to Work award, which
Wow,
was
congratulations.
fun for us. Yeah, thank you. That was very exciting. And some of the criteria are those things. What is the most important thing to people? So they sent an interesting. I read an interesting blog of the 25 top perks of the things that people want, in their careers. And number one was a decent paid parental leave beyond the legal requirement in this country. That was number one. So we do that. So that's good. Men and women, or I should say birth parent and non-birth parent in our company, get the same, paid leave, full paid leave of, I think it's 9 weeks now. And then the way it works is the women end up having a little more time if they need it. So, and let me take that back. It's not the women, the birth parent is usually how we say it.
Right.
So, and then, second was, something, there were a few things, and then very high in that list, like top five was flexibility. And I really firmly believe that in every possible workplace, if you are given not the fact that you don't come to work regularly, but you are mentally given the space to understand that if there's an emergency, you can take care of it and not feel guilty, you will be a better employee and you will be happier at work. I really believe that, and I'm experimenting with that here at Addgene. We have a very diverse workplace. Our messaging is, if your kid is sick, if you're sick, your car breaks down, your boiler breaks, you're moving and you need extra time, whatever it is, if you need to take care of your life, just let us know. We'll figure it out.
And that must make employees more loyal and feel better about the company and contributing to the company because the company is giving them so much flexibility and they feel like, yes, I want to invest more into this company because I'm getting so much out of it and my life is really more balanced at this company versus others.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's the outcome, and it seems to be. We have a lot of people here who will say that's one reason, one of the many reasons why they like working here. I just think it's how you treat people. I don't think people like to be treated like children or mistreated, and I think that making someone feel guilty when, so that they don't go to the doctor when they should because they can't miss that 1 hour or be late that day, that's stupid. So,
Yeah.
I don't use that. I don't use that. Would you like that if someone treated you that way? So
definitely not.
how could I treat someone else that way, right? I want to have that flexibility. And so at every level of the company, we provide. Now, Addgene has a lot of work that is time bound. We answer phones. We're doing customer service from 9 to 5 every day US, and then we have someone in Europe. So we do have time-bound activities, but what we do is we have the teams work together to cover for one another if someone needs to be out. And so, and they're great about it. They're super fantastic about supporting each other to allow us to have that flexibility. So again, we're a nonprofit. We have a little leeway. We can, experiment with some of these more, I think these more important management tools. But the number of people that I know that want to run from their jobs because they're literally afraid to tell their boss that they have a dentist appointment, to me, is ridiculous.
It is, definitely. And another factor that people consider when taking a job in a workplace is how much they're going to get paid. And that's definitely one that is high on people's list and maybe not number one as it's been in the past. There's a lot of debate surrounding the gender pay gap and how much men are getting paid compared to women. Can you explain what the ratio of female to male earnings is? I know I've seen a lot of different numbers, so I'd like to kind of hear your expertise answer on this.
Yeah, so this is a little controversial. It depends on how you do it. I think I'll say Massachusetts because that's what I know the best, and we could look up some data. It's not so different around the country. Women are about 80 cents on the dollar. And that takes into consideration, people say, oh, but that's because more part-time women and more, women lower roles. But that takes into consideration all the variables of, part-time and, direct comparison, job for job. I work full-time as a scientist and you work full-time as a scientist. You're a man, you make $1, I make 80 cents. That's basically what we're looking at. And, there's many reasons for that. I will tell you, it's interesting. This was, a lot of years ago, some 25 years ago when I was at Abbott. So let's say somewhere around 1998. So it wasn't quite that long ago. I helped found a diversity council at the company. And, we didn't accomplish that much. Big companies take a long time. Abbott does a lot of diversity work, and now I wouldn't say it's a bad place to work, but in general, they were facing some of the same cultural issues for minorities, especially racial minorities, and gender preference and other things as any other pharmaceutical company. And one of the things we were able to do with quite a bit of pressure was to trigger a salary review, where we asked HR to look across the board. The company was pretty big, hundreds of people, look at everybody on one level and say how many years they'd been there, what their resume looked like, and just do a review and see if anybody's out of whack. Maybe because they didn't negotiate, maybe because they didn't know to ask for more money, or maybe they just, whatever the reason was, they were offered something totally different because of who they were. But their companies can take responsibility and say, these people have similar performance reviews, they started at a similar time, they're the same qualities and skills, they should be making about the same amount of money, right? And some huge percentage of women received salary adjustments, myself included.
Nice.
And they weren't necessarily gigantic, but a couple $1,000s makes a big difference as you get promoted over the years, on your salary, because promotions are usually done on a percentage basis. So it grows, the disparity grows. So I can tell you firsthand that that's happening. So what do we do at Addgene? 2 or 3 times a year, I sit with finance and HR, and we do review. We're a smaller company, so the roles are a little more diverse. It's not quite as easy. But we don't wait all the time for people to come and tell us they want more money. We review salaries, and sometimes we adjust their salaries according to the market or according to, diversity issues, in case they didn't negotiate well or they started at a different time or whatever it is, just to make sure that there's some fairness and equity. Now, we're a small company. We're about 65 people total. So it's a little easier for us to do that. But those kinds of practices, can make a huge difference for diversity, looking at it critically with your own data, right? And larger companies are starting to do that, but, it's not great yet, I would say.
It's going to take a while to eventually someday have that equality and just those practices that are in place universally.
Right. So, the gold star recommendation, and I myself don't know if this is the best thing, is to do it the way the government does it, which is transparent salaries. So if you're level 63, this is what you make. Man, woman, black, white, gay, not gay, young, old, whatever it is. If you're a level 63, this is what you make. Right. And everybody knows that. So if I get myself promoted to level 63, that's how much money I should make. Right.
And is that public knowledge then that, level 63 is X amount of money? Okay.
Yep. That's how government, from my understanding, that's how most of government salary works, that you can find that information out. So it would, as I don't know if you haven't really worked in corporation, right, Kara? So you've
not
never.
Not yet, no.
Yeah, not yet. So maybe in the future. It's extremely turbid how salaries work. It's a big secret. And if you're a new person in the workplace navigating it, some people are better at it and some people just aren't, because it's like very sneaky.
It's a taboo topic to ask. How much do you make?
That's right. It's a taboo topic to ask. It's a taboo topic. And so, if it were more transparent, I think some of these problems would disappear essentially. And so, who knows how soon we can do something more like that.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
That would be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So talking about different career paths, what are some career paths in science that are not traditional or not as well known, not just research or professor of a lot of the career paths people, maybe college students, think going into college? I have this option and this option. There are so many more. Can you highlight a couple that you're aware of?
Yeah, so I love that, to me, there's like academia, because that's what we all, as scientists, we're sort of trained to do. And then there's like a million other things you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, my recommendation is always to really meet people and be open to meeting people, because meeting cool people is how you get cool jobs. That's for sure how I got this very cool job at Addgene. So I have a video on YouTube, if you look for my name, called Not Networking 101, because it's about building relationships, not just networking. I really recommend that's the broadening your network from very early and meeting people is how you're going to find out about cool stuff. So for example, Addgene, nonprofit science has all kinds of diverse roles. And Addgene has PhD scientists in communications roles. Our blog manager is as you know, you're in that in that field, science
Yes.
communication is a PhD. Our head of business development is a PhD scientist. He was promoted up through our marketing and outreach team. Most of our marketing and outreach people that visit with scientists are PhD scientists. I am a PhD scientist, and I'm not more than technically in management now. So, you know, we have very few bench roles, although we have a few scientists in bench roles, but most not. And then we have our whole scientist team, and they are doing technical service and working with depositors, and they're sort of subject area experts. Not everybody knows this. We answer about 300 technical calls a week.
Wow.
Not to mention hundreds of emails, I would say. So when what they're you know, and they're just helping people find the plasmids they're looking for, working with depositors on deposits, you know, doing technical service essentially. And, you know, if you like to help people and teach and become an expert in something, technical service is another little paid attention to career path that some scientists find very rewarding. So yeah, that's just within our one little nonprofit, those diverse roles. You know, there's roles that lean more on writing, like grant writing. You know, there's medical writing roles. There's, you know, then there's the whole legal, technical evaluation, tech transfer. You know, it's really there's so many interesting things you can't even really describe them all.
It's really endless. That if you want to go into something, it's usually, as you said, someone meets someone and hears about their job and is like, that's what I want to do. That's what I've been looking for, but I just didn't know it was out there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what happens. And so, like when I was working in for-profit biotech right before I started at Addgene. It's about 5 years ago, and I got laid off because that's what happens to a lot of for-profit biotechs, it was a super fun job. I was working in siRNA technology development, and very exciting time. Craig Mello, one of the Nobel Prize winners, was one of the founders of the company. So, you know, it was a great job, and I loved working there. But, you know, the company downsized, as is very common. And then I was sort of looking for a job, and I had never really done that before. My last transition, I had a job before I left my first job. I was offered, you know, recruited away, essentially. And I wasn't looking for this job at all. I was looking for a very specific type of alliance management role in biotech again. And I had managed to network my way to interviews in that field, so I was kind of doing it right and everything. And then, because so many connections of mine were in common with Addgene and knew Melina as the founder of Addgene, they sent me the job description and said, "This sounds like you. They're looking for someone who's managed lots of people, who's a molecular biologist." I'm a molecular biologist by training and worked with lots of plasmids and technical aspects of molecular biology. They want someone who's interested in people development, who is interested in diversity and training and all these things. And like, wow, that does sound like me.
It's like they looked at your resume and said, how can we write a job description for her?
A little bit, yeah. And I was like, well, I should, you know, so... You know, the story there is that, just like with everything else, knowing people helps. So I had met Melina some years before I had handed her an award at a ceremony for women in science as a founder of a nonprofit in science. And so I'd met her, I'd, you know, shaken her hand and said hello. And I also knew 3 of the Addgene board members through science and through my connections in various ways. And so, you know, that made the whole interview process much less stressful, and certainly gave me a foot in the door. So I didn't have to go through the whole process. I basically had coffee with Melina, and that's how we started out the interview process.
And networking is just so vital in order to have options in your career and be able to say, hey, this looks like a good company. I can get my foot in the door here. What are some strategies to network? Because, you know, there's the trading business cards, you never call each other, but how do you actually make those meaningful, beneficial connections where you actually utilize having a professional relationship with someone?
Yeah, so I recommend watching my video because, like, I can't do it all in one.
Yeah.
And I'm always happy for people to reach out and ask me questions.
And the
But
video is
what?
Not Networking
It's
101.
called Not Networking 101, and if you look on YouTube for my name, Joanne Kamens, it'll
Yeah,
come up.
I'll put a link
Come
in
up
the
first thing.
bio. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been watched. So a lot of times when people want to talk with me and like sort of do coffee, I'll say, you know what, watch this first, and then let's talk about it because I can't possibly re-say all these things.
Yeah.
So, but one hint is make networking sort of what I say, and I have a blog in my LinkedIn profile called Making Networking Normal. So I don't like fake networking. Nobody likes fake networking.
No.
Going to events with a bunch of strangers, trying to get business cards, like with people that you're never going to follow up with. And it's so uncomfortable. And if you're introverted, it's painful. Like you're probably not introverted. I'm not introverted, but half of the scientists are introverted. And that's not a practical approach for them going to, large events. So what I did and what worked for me was just doing stuff with people that cared about what I did. So in my case, it was diversity in science. That was a fortunate sideline that I was interested in because I met a ton of scientists that way. I worked on the Association for Women of Science and Healthcare Business Women's Association and the Diversity Council that I mentioned, and made relationships with people through working with them, which is very natural. And those people became connections, for my future career. Many of them led to opportunities, and I helped them and they helped me. And, so one thing is just to get involved in something. Don't just put your nose to the bench, do something else. And that's going to broaden your relationship base right away.
And offering those people that you do meet and start to kind of have a budding professional relationship with, say, hey, I've heard of this. Can I help you out with that? Or offering your own help, and they'll probably end up returning it somewhere down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just, planning, starting up the AWIS chapter here in Boston, the Association for Women in Science, I just met people just planning events, and, that really snowballed, and now it's a big, huge chapter, and it's fantastically active. But all those women are a connection, are a network. There are similar networks for co-ed groups and for men. I'm more familiar with the ones for women. But for me, that's how I built my network was very naturally by doing things with and for people.
And you kind of grow it from there.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that about wraps up today's episode of DNA Today. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing how to get your foot in the door in science. And once you're there, if you're a woman in science, how we can change things and how we can elevate to have more women involved and at higher levels, of course.
Thanks for having me, Kira.
Yeah, definitely.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so people can go to dnapodcast.com, and if you're on Twitter, @DNApodcast. If you have any questions at all, even if you feel like they're stupid, there are no stupid questions. You can email over at info@dnapodcast.com. If there's any questions for Joanne, I'll shoot them her way to make sure that she gets back to you. So thanks again for coming on the program. Really appreciate hearing your expert opinion.
Thanks, Kira.
Thanks for listening, and join me next week to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.
The genes of you and me, the genes of you and me are all made of DNA. We're all made of the same chemical DNA.